Guys, recently I listened to a recorded telephone conversation between a professional and a staff, and certain statements made in that recording had me very troubled and concerned. It raised a lot of emotions, and in this video, I am going to be speaking how being a professional and attorney, I deal with persons of differences. Stay tuned. Being an attorney, I have the honor of interacting with persons who may have no or little formal educational training to persons who have obtained a doctorate in their areas of studies. It calls upon me to be emotionally intelligent in knowing how to interact with persons of various educational status so that I can make these persons comfortable whenever they come before me, so that I could decipher what their problems are and find a solution to save them. Now, if I am to make someone uncomfortable because of their educational status, how am I of use to an individual because a person may not have had the opportunity like me to go to school and study? That's unfair. I can recall a particular case I dealt with where after a while I realized that this person had some difficulties in reading. And in having conversation with the person, I understood why the person was unable to go to a formal educational institution to get training. However, after a while we were interacting, I was able to make that person very comfortable, and we then had conversations as to how that person was able to now go to adult literacy class. As such, as a professional, persons look up to you, and you have to use that power that you have, use the influence that you have to see how you can assist persons, not to condemn persons and to mistreat persons because of their educational status. So for me, I strongly condemn any professional who would make statements about a person's educational status and we want to treat or see a person differently because of their educational status. Now, don't get me wrong, I am in full endorsement of a person improving themselves through education, but one must be emotionally intelligent in knowing how to interact and serve persons of different educational status. Let's move on to my next point. If you've been following my videos, you will know that I come from a family of little means. Daddy being a fisherman and mommy being a housewife, and I love them very much because they taught me how to appreciate living with little, and they are the ones who told me never forget where I came from. As such, whenever I hear persons making statements about persons of little means and mistreating persons of little means, it raises a lot of emotions within me. In fact, I have dealt with persons who are very wealthy, businessmen who may engage in large business contracts, and then I've dealt with persons of little means. In fact, I remember there was one particular case where there was a single mother who was being abused for some years, and she came to the office and we had a conversation. And throughout the conversation, I was hearing statements such as she was afraid to go by attorneys because there was the issue of cost, the amount of the money that attorneys would charge. We dealt with the issue accordingly, but I want to let you know that I have spoken to many of my colleagues, and there are many of us out there, attorneys, who are willing to assist persons as best as we can. So if it is that you have little means, there's either means of assisting you through legal aid, or possibly looking at payment plans, or even doing matters pro bono that many attorneys do throughout the Caribbean. So to be condemning and belittling a person because of their financial status, I condemn that also. And I believe that as a professional, we ought to be available and use our training and our skills to assist persons of all financial status, the wealthy and the not so wealthy. Let's move on. I'll tell you this, it's a privilege where I could be in a position to interact and represent persons of various races and ethnicities. For me, whenever I hear of racial discrimination, it raises deep emotions within me. If it does for you as well, I'm encouraging you to just leave in the comments right below there, hashtag no to racism. Go ahead, hashtag no to racism. Listen to me. Racism impacts persons of all cultures, nations, all peoples, to the point where even the United Nations, they have introduced what is called the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. Yeah, it's a long name, but the convention just seeks to encourage countries to introduce legislation or laws that will eliminate and deal with the issue of racial discrimination. Now, even though most of the Caribbean islands, they've signed on to this convention, the only way that that convention can become domestic law is if it's incorporated into a specific country. That is done through Parliament. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, one of the closest acts that resembles or reflects that of the convention is the Equal Opportunity Act. which deals with the issue of racial discrimination. And we will, I promise you, we will deal with that particular act in some other videos as time goes by. Now, when I think about all the discrimination that's still taking place here in Trinidad and Tobago and other Caribbean islands, I ask myself, what is it that we need to do? Is it that we need to now review the legislation and introduce new laws to address this particular issue? Is it that we need to now look at programs to educate persons and train persons to be more culturally sensitive in a multicultural, diverse country as ours? What is it that we need to do? How is it that we are now going to address persons who make racist statements of which we condemn? How are we now going to incorporate them back into society? How is reconciliation going to be taking place? I ask myself, individually, what are we doing to address the issue of racism? How are we condemning racism on social media? Is it that we are promoting it, or is it that we are addressing it? Are we encouraging persons to make reports whenever there is racial discrimination? Are we encouraging persons to be more culturally sensitive in how they express themselves? What are we doing? On this channel, I will commit to share and enlighten you through my videos about the issue of racism. So I am going to be doing a video on that Equal Opportunity Act. So if you haven't already, just make sure that you subscribe right below there. You guys, as I said, racism it impacts all persons, and there's need for us to see how we can deal with this issue as best as we can. You guys, thank you so much for looking at to the end of this video. If you haven't already, just make sure that you subscribe right below there, right there, and I will see you in my other video. Take care for now.